This is Dana Samuelson with the American Gold Exchange. You're listening to the Average Joe Finances Podcast with Mike Cavagioni.
If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the like and subscribe buttons. If you're listening to our podcast, go leave us a 5-star review. All of our links can be found in the video description or show notes below.
Hello, and welcome back to the Average Joe Finances Podcast. I'm your host today, Tanya, the Money Life Coach, and we are here with Joe Downs. He is the CEO of Belrose Storage Group, and he has over 17 years of experience in commercial real estate. So he knows what he's doing. I'm super excited that you're here today, Joe, and welcome to the podcast.
I honestly, I'm probably more like your average Joe than introduce me, but thank you. It's awesome to be here.
I love that. Well, you're already downplaying, your experience, but yeah, let's just dive right in. Like, tell us a little bit about who you are, your story, and kind of like how you got here.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna retract your statement in a second because I am more like your average Joe. My what I call my journey or my real estate progression probably started out like most people's do. By the way, I used to be a financial advisor right out of college. And long story short, but what I learned in that world was you can't really control anything. It's just a big casino. And one day, really, 9/11 was a defining moment for me. And I always feel bad saying that because I didn't lose a parent or a relative in the towers. And in fact, I was kind of lucky that I only really lost like a distant, acquaintance. But what that day told me was it didn't matter what you were trained to do and tell people to do, and all events like that can happen, and it sends the entire world into upheaval. And that's not the only one. There was the .com crash. There was the mortgage meltdown in 2008. But that for me was the moment because I was 7 or so years into that career and it was totally out of my control. And that's when I realized it was just a casino, and everything before and after that has just confirmed that for me. But I'm not beating up the stock market by any stretch of the imagination. I invest in it. I just don't want to operate in it, is what I'm trying to say. And so that led me to really soul searching, but also because we had a week off actually after that, the markets were closed. And I thought about one day, just like, who are the wealthiest people I know and what do they do? And the two wealthiest people that I knew, and I don't mean Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, I mean like I'm in their phone as Joe Downs. Both were in real estate. One's a developer, one was in, multifamily acquisitions and management. And I just thought, well, I was always interested in real estate, and you know what, no matter what I do going forward, even if it's temporary, I'm getting into real estate. That's where I want to be. And that's where my passion was. So shortly after 9/11, I left. And by the way, I was always kind of not realizing it. I was always an entrepreneur. I always had multiple jobs. So even now as the CEO of one company, I own another, and I'm constantly doing other things like teaching people how to buy storage. But I was always a bartender back then. So in my early 20s and into my early 30s, I bartended for like 10 years. And the bar that I bartended at had to close, and there was an opportunity to buy it. So I left the financial stock market world and went into owning a bar, because every young, late 20, early 30-year-old man, that's just a calling. It's a rite of passage.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
But it's one of the dumbest things you can do because it's a ton of work with, not a lot of reward. And maybe the bar part was fun, but the restaurant part wasn't. I ended up losing money. I lost the bar, but it was the greatest lesson I think I've ever had, better than college. I lost like $100,000, but boy, did I have made up for that 20 or 30 fold since then. More than that, probably. just the lessons you learn from failure. And what I always tell people too is you're either winning or learning. There's no losing in life unless you don't learn from it. So I learned a lot from that. I left when that experiment was finished. I actually got a job in radio, selling radio, like Bill Crystal and City Slickers I saw there.
Yeah.
And that was, I knew, temporary, but that actually ended up being the launch pad to where I am today, not knowing it going into it. Two of my clients were in real estate. One of them was a mentorship program that taught people how to buy, rehab, and either rent or flip houses, single family homes. They were my client. They advertised on the radio. I ended up going to their seminars, going through their program, learning how to do it, and started with a partner buying. And actually, I think we started wholesaling houses, like the normal progression. If you don't, and I didn't have any money then, I was broke. So we wholesaled houses because we didn't have money. We had the sweat equity, we had the time. So I'd go out on weekends and find houses and learned how to wholesale them. And then we bought some and rented them and flipped some. And then I had another client who was a commercial real estate developer. And I didn't go work for them, but they had one of the guys that was my contact had a friend who was in 1031 exchanges in commercial real estate. And they needed a sales guy. And I was a sales guy. So I went and learned that business. It was all multifamily office and some hotels. And I ended up raising a lot of money as 1031 exchanges. And that was my foray into that business. And then the mortgage meltdown happened. So I had to reinvent again because that business went poof. It went from a $4 billion a year industry to like nothing overnight. So I had to reinvent. And I had met one of my current partners at a tax lien seminar in Philadelphia because I was into real estate now. I was in that world. I was a junkie now, and I was going to do something in real estate. And we ended up in a niche in real estate buying distressed second mortgages, which everyone told us we were crazy to do. And that's the other thing I learned about myself is when people tell me I'm crazy and that's stupid and dumb, now I'm more interested. I'm more curious, like what crazy. And so we went into that business. We still have that business, but even that business had cycles. So for a 3-year period in like 2014, maybe 15, 16, 17, somewhere in there, we couldn't buy any distressed debt. The banks weren't selling anymore or for a period of time. And so we had to reinvent again. And somewhere along the way, I got an email about self-storage. And it was a marketing email, probably because I'd been to so many of these conferences. I used to go to all these, both residential and commercial real estate conferences around the country. And so my name, my email address was on some list somewhere. And I got an email and it said something like, the tagline, which caught my attention, is not really that true, but it worked, which is in self-storage, there's no tenants, toilets, or trash. And that's not true. There's tenants. We have tenants. That's the lifeblood of our business is tenants storing stuff. And sometimes they leave trash, but there's definitely no toilets. And really what interested me in that was, as I learned more, was not so much the marketing that got my attention. It was the fact that at the time, 80% of all storage facilities in the United States were owned by what we consider mom and pop owners, meaning not the REIT. So you said you live in Lake Tahoe earlier, but you grew up in Southern California, right? Mm-hmm. So self-storage to you and to most people, and to me included at the time, because I didn't know anything about self-storage, is public storage, extra space, and CubeSmart. Right? Yeah. That's all I knew about storage. I never rented a unit. I drove by them. Self-storage operators never came to our commercial real estate conferences. Never saw one at any conference. So I didn't know anything about self-storage. So this was, this new thing to learn. And this was back in 2018. And so I started looking, I got the advertisement in 16 and 17, started looking into it. 18 is when I took action. So started to learn more about it and was totally intrigued by the fact that there's still 70+% of these facilities are owned by what we consider mom and pop owners, which just means they were pioneers in the business, but they don't really know how to run and manage them today, especially with technology that we have at our fingertips today, et cetera. So that's how I ended up here. Now I'm the CEO of our company, Belrose Storage Group. We do 3 things. We buy storage facilities from mom and pop owners and expand them a little bit. We teach people how to do it. So we'll either wholesale or consult, but we teach people how to do it as well. So people looking to get into the self-storage industry or real estate in general We show them how to do that. And then storage is so interesting because there's so many niches within the niche. And we're developing one ourselves, which is more of a B2B. So storage is kind of B2C, consumers rent storage typically, some businesses. But there's an entire growing market segment of business owner use, particularly with the onset of e-commerce, which is like wildfire right now, right?
Yeah.
So we're actually launching and developing B2B storage units, which are just bigger, and for business owners.
Yeah.
And
super smart.
consumers for, high-end consumers because they're so big and the ceilings are so high, you can drive RVs into them, that type of thing. So
Oh,
kind of like they're true, storage was always called mini warehouse. It's not really mini warehouse. It's so small. It's not really mini warehouse. What we're building is actually mini warehouse, like 1,000 square foot units.
that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
no, that makes a lot of sense. Well, being somebody who has moved, I can't even count literally how many times. And I've I've had many storage units. Yeah, I know, the whole thing. It's very interesting industry. And I know like a lot of people, especially that listen to this podcast, like people like, oh, that makes sense. Everybody has too much stuff now. Everybody has storage units will never go away in a sense. And a lot of people just leave their stuff there. And, sometimes, I've left my stuff in them for like years and like, oh, I need to go see what's inside of them. So like, obviously it depends on where you're at. There's so many factors, but like, what is the normal like return on investment, or what can people expect if they want to get into something like that? Because I think people in their minds, like my mind, like, oh, you just must make a lot of money doing that. But like you said, so many other factors.
Yeah, you can for sure, and it's an operating business at the end of the day. If your question, I'm going to answer in two parts, if that's all right. What kind of return can people see? Well, so as a passive investor, when we raise money, in fact, when we buy deals, we raise money from passive investors as 506C or 506B deals, which is the securities label that we slap on them and follow those rules. You'll see anywhere from 8% on the low end to 20%, right? Most of the deals we bring out are in the kind of low to mid teens and double digit returns. If not teens, double digit, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And then all the way up to 17, 18, we've done deals. It just depends on the deal and the cycle we're in. So when we started in storage, it was pre-COVID, and everything we bought, we owned during COVID. So I don't know if you know what happened to storage during COVID. It went off the rails. It was probably the hottest investment there was because people were working from home, clearing out rooms, clearing out garages, like putting stuff in storage, right? So our occupancies went through the roof. Our
And
rates
also
went
moving down, like moving, downsizing, like you're saying, you're like living in a van. Selling everything. Yeah.
And then after storage was the opposite effect. So we're coming out of a very tough cycle, right? So our occupancies are dropping. Now they've stabilized now, but for the year and a half or 2 years after COVID, they dropped, rates came down. So that was kind of a tougher period. But that was unique because, it was a pandemic. Like it's not a normal occurrence. Storage normally does what storage does great is in bad times and great times. And where it does okay is just kind of normal times.
Yeah.
And you nailed it because people are moving. They're moving and buying stuff for good reasons, or they're moving and storing stuff for bad reasons, right?
Yeah.
That's when storage does really well. To the second part of your question or I answered the passive part. So that's what the returns can look like. But for your listeners, and by the way, I commend every podcast host for doing this because what you guys are doing, we didn't have access to. It didn't, if it was around, maybe I wasn't keen on it or didn't know about podcasts, but the amount of the information you are providing to your listeners is invaluable, right?
Thank you. Yeah.
It's such a leg up on kind of how we came through my generation. I'm 51, but now, by the way, is the greatest time probably ever to buy storage because we buy it based on the trailing 12, meaning what is the performance of the last 12 months? That's what you're paying for.
Oh.
You're not paying for what it can do. You're paying for what it's done.
That's interesting.
So everyone's trailing 12s are down. So the entire storage industry is on sale right now.
Oh,
And you might say, well, why would they sell? Well, because life happens. So we buy from mom and pops. So they're typically older. And that's another reason why. The average age of who we buy from is probably 70. So
mm,
they're retiring, or unfortunately, people are dying or getting sick or whatever. But they've decided it's time to sell. They can't control the market they're in, that's time to sell.
yeah,
So it's just an amazing market to be buying storage. And I say that, and I'm speaking directly to anyone who's interested in getting involved in real estate for the first time or graduating. I don't mean it to sound that way. I call it graduating. I feel like I graduated, but progressing from single family, either residential or flips, into a commercial asset. You think because you're in single family, well, my next step has to be, a multifamily of
right.
some size, right? A commercial multifamily of some size. And it doesn't have to be. There's a lot of storage is different. There's nuances you need to learn, but there's a lot. I mean, it's 80% the same. It's just the
Yeah.
last 20% that's different. And storage, that one unique difference, and this is key for your listening audience, one unique difference between storage and pretty much every other, not every, but most other real estate asset classes is storage is a business. And what that means is you can use the SBA to help you finance those deals.
Yep.
Multifamily, as an example, or office, those are investments. The SBA does not finance those deals. So if we help, my company helps people buy
Yeah.
storage facilities for the first time, that might cost $500,000, $700,000. And they're using SBA loans to buy them at 90% financing because that's what they can get.
Dang.
So when I
That's
say
super
that's a
interesting.
distinct difference, I'm not saying the asset class is better. I love
Right.
multifamily.
Right.
I invest in others in multifamily. Just don't want to operate it. I have in the past. I want to operate them. I love operating storage, and I love teaching people and helping people get into storage because of the unique differences that storage provides, and the ability, the barriers are lower to get into storage for folks trying to get into commercial real estate assets for the first time than our other asset classes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another option. And that is, I didn't think about it. Yeah, like the SBA perspective makes a lot of sense. And that's like
Yeah.
super interesting, right? Because that's the biggest thing is people having the capital or, somehow figuring that piece of it out, which can be a lot of risk for a lot of people. So yeah, that's great. So how long has the company been around and how do you kind of operate from day to day? Or like I guess like not I guess I don't want to know that part, but like what's like exciting for you right now and like what you guys are doing with Belrose?
What's exciting for me? Well, I love helping people get into first part of your question. We've been around for whatever 25, so 6 years.
Okay.
And what I love doing is helping people get in. We like buying deals ourselves. We're deal junkies. We love finding great deals, right?
Yeah.
That's you only get to brag, to yourselves about that.
Yeah.
Not that we
You're
brag.
so great.
I
Yeah.
don't want to make it seem like we brag, but what we love doing is helping people get into deals. And then I'm super passionate about building these what we call pro storage, these B2B, large format storage facilities.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Like, and it just makes a lot of sense. Like with, like you said, RVs and other big, if people have businesses and stuff that they need to store, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And
You nailed, and boat and RV is another niche. We own some of
yeah,
those. Some people
yeah,
get excited about that. Then you have, look, there's people that store art, wine, cars. I mean,
yeah.
it's an
Oh man,
unbelievable
I've been
business.
in
Yeah.
some of the my friend has a lot of classic cars and I've been in like some of the car storage places. Wow, those are like pretty cool. Like,
Yeah. And they're businesses. And then
yeah,
you can even see them, they turn them into lounges,
yep. That's what they
right?
do. They have a whole
Yeah.
lounge with like
Yeah.
another room that you can like rent out and it's like, yeah, it's like a classic car showroom, but it's like
Yeah.
bright. Yeah, I was like, wow.
And that's a business.
This is a whole nother thing. Yeah, that's crazy because you do when you think of the B2C, just like, okay, people who are moving, need downsizing, whatever it is. What are the biggest like pain points in that? Like, like you said, people see the Storage Wars shows and some of those things where stuff just gets left there. Like, is that what are some of the downsides, I guess?
Yeah, I'll give you the downside, and I'll address that for you too. So I always tell people, if you can flip a house for $12,000, like they do on Flip This House, then Storage Wars is real. people by the way, that's why I love Pro Storage, because it
Mhm.
flips. And I'm not beating up storage. We own storage, we buy storage. I love storage. But Pro Storage, they're storing, it's business owners, it's contractors storing, tens of thousands of dollars worth of inventory and equipment, or RVs and boats, right? Versus, what did you store when you stored your stuff, Tanya? Like,
Crap.
who cares about, right?
Yeah,
And if
furniture,
we go to sell it,
random
it's not
old
worth
stuff.
anything.
Yeah,
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 it's not
exactly.
worth anything to go to sell it. So thank you for being a patron. I don't want
Yeah.
to.
Oh yeah. I don't even know.
But yeah, when the Storage Wars, they grab a couple of units, they put it together into one, and then it's all it's scripted.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not a pain point for us. The pain point is them not paying. The getting rid of their stuff. There's online auction companies. We'll have your stuff out in 45 days. It's auctioned off, gone. What we want to get to, that's not a revenue event for us. We want to get the unit back open and ready to rent again.
Mhm.
That's what we're after with the auctions. The pain points are dealing with consumers who they run the gamut of totally normal customer to completely crazy. You're going to have some of those in every facility. Yeah. So break-ins are not common, but they're not uncommon. And you can control some of it. So you can kind of control whether you're going to have them or not, just based on where you're buying. So that's one of the things we look at up front is, what is the crime and the poverty in the area that, we're looking at a facility. And might be interesting to point out here, because this is commonly asked. People always say, well, is this a good area for storage, or is that a good area for storage? And I always tell them, depends. I mean, everywhere is a good area or a bad area for storage. Storage is very local. It's a 1, 3, or 5 mile market. If you get rural, it becomes like a 10, 15-minute drive time market. But it just all depends. You could take, someone asked me recently who was from Atlanta, is Atlanta a good place for storage? And I said, yes and no. And I could find you 20 markets that are terrible outside of Atlanta and 20 that are great. It just all depends. So for pain points, that's one of them. Just like I was saying, just dealing with some of the customers, but most of it, technology is solving. There used to be a lot more pain points. It used to be, I would have told you, 7 years ago, maybe I would have said collecting cash and checks is a pain point, because then you got to make sure. We don't even collect it anymore. Everything's auto paid. If it's not
Yeah.
auto paid, I think there's some facilities that we have send us checks. That's it. If we don't get that check to our office in outside of Philadelphia, regardless of where the facility is, and none of them are close to us, then they're in default, and then we treat it as just a
Yeah.
normal default. So the pain points they're just operational. It's a business at the end of the day, but they're not. There's nothing typically crazy with it.
Yeah.
It's all manageable, and technology continues to help us solve them.
That's great. Well, I know we're just about at, time today, but I want to get into the final round because I know you'll have some good insights on these. So what is one of the biggest mistakes that you've ever made when it comes to your business or finance life, or both?
Business, one of the reasons I've said this before, and I've made this mistake twice, which you shouldn't do.
Okay.
The first time was with the bar. So I knew how to run the bar. I didn't know how to run the kitchen. And I let the chef run the kitchen. And the kitchen is what ultimately took us under. So not knowing, so what I tell people is you have to know what's going on in your kitchen, right? And that's my, phrase for everything. I say I made it again because I sort of made it again. I'm taking responsibility for making it again because I'm the CEO and the buck stops with me. But we had some storage facilities during the COVID down years, which nobody realized at first what was happening, where we should have had more control of the kitchen, more control of how we were managing rates and occupancy, et cetera. We had a manager who reported to us but didn't work for us. It was an independent contractor, and our head should have been in the kitchen more. So and what I love about storage is you can dig out of these holes. With enough time, you can dig out of these holes. So, and we're doing that with most of them. But the lesson learned is you can't can't turn your head on the kitchen. You have to know what's going on at all times, regardless of the business. You have to stay on top of it, and to the point where you're almost, and I'm not a micromanager, but you almost have to threaten it, right? With if employees or third parties or whoever, you really have to give the impression, if not actually be in charge of the kitchen. You have to give the impression that you know what's going on, if not actually know what's going on. So to me, if I could impart any advice on people, it's these are operating businesses. You have to be able to operate them and know what's going on at all times. And if you can't because you're doing this and doing that, slow down and make sure the kitchen's running the way it should be running, because that's the lifeblood of the business. What was your second question? I'm sorry. I get focused so much on
No, I love that analogy though, and I think that's really great. That's like, and that reminded me of another reality show, Undercover Boss, where it's like you have to know what's going on, like in every faucet of your business, for it to really be successful and understand what's going on.
And it should go without saying, right? There's probably people listening who are going, no, I don't know if we can curse on these, but
yeah, go ahead.
No shit, Sherlock. But it's so easy for you to take your eye off it because you're doing so many other things.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with me the second time, and probably the first time too. The first time I had no business. What I learned was I had no business in a restaurant.
You're like, that was fun. I learned, and I got some free drinks out of it.
Yeah.
What is something you've learned that you wish you would have known when you first started out in real estate and or the storage business?
Oh, I got a great one for this. So we made the mistake in storage early to set our sights on a buy box, which had to meet certain minimum criteria, which you could argue is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought it was too. What we didn't realize was we were seeing really good deals that didn't fit our buy box that we could have monetized another way. Like, for instance, now we coach and consult and wholesale deals. We didn't do that at first. And what we learned, several years into the business, the hardest part of this business is finding that good deal. So if you find the good deal, monetize it some way. It doesn't mean we had to buy it and own it and operate it. That's what we were protecting against, because we didn't want to be tied down with smaller facilities that wouldn't be able to support us. But we could have monetized them another way. Mm-hmm. So now looking back on that, I mean, I don't know how much money we could have made. We didn't, where we just kicked these small deals to the curb and never did anything with them. Knowing we had other buyers out there, we could have wholesaled. So it's another mistake. This call's turning into how many mistakes can Joe Downs make?
I know, everything in hindsight, right? It's like so many things in hindsight. You're like, oh, oops. Well, that makes sense now. But like you said, learning experience. Do you have any tips or tricks that you recommend for someone who's just getting started in storage or real estate?
Yeah, get started. So whether it's single family homes or storage or hotels, or whatever it is, we live in the information age. The information's out there everywhere. Study up, learn up, get a mentor if you can. It's the mistake. A mentor, a coach, a guide, whatever, is worth 10x.
Totally.
What you would pay is worth 10x than the money you could lose, the mistakes you can make. We did it as well in storage through Scott Meyer's Academy. He's one of the lead coaches out there for self-storage, and his mentorship program and workshops, et cetera. There's podcasts you can listen to. Information's out there everywhere. I would highly recommend you get a coach or a mentor, but most importantly, get started. What's the saying? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
Yeah.
Right. 80% is good enough to be really successful. Just get started. Don't stop the him and hawing. And ask yourself, why are you listening to this podcast? Mm-hmm. You're listening to this podcast not just because Tanya's really nice and great to listen to, but because you're trying to make a difference in your life one way or the other, right? So take action. You've started with the podcast. That's awesome. Next step is to take action. Tanya's, I'm sure, bringing on amazing hosts and me, and an okay guess. But get out there, whatever, look, storage is for everybody. Find out what tickles your fancy and get started. That's my advice.
Love it. Yep. 100%. Take action, not just consume information.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite business, investing, or real estate related books or podcasts that have been some of your favorites?
Well, the Average Joe podcast, of course.
Duh.
But books wise, I think everyone should read Who Not How, especially if you're trying to get started out and doing something, and you need 50 hours in a day, and there's only 24, and you theoretically should sleep part of them. Who Not How is an incredible book that really helps you refocus on what you should and shouldn't be doing based on what your unique ability is, right? So, I'm good at certain things. Classic example. I'm good at talking to people and selling, right? I could probably figure out how to launch and design a website. In fact, I think I've tried at one point in my life. But that would probably take me 10 times longer than it would take someone who does it for a living.
Totally.
Right? So if that's 10 hours versus 1 hour, as an example, were my 10 hours better spent doing that or doing what I do best and paying for someone to do that? So it helps you put in perspective what your unique abilities are and to focus on them and to get help, professional help where you need it, right? And so that's the who, not how. So ask yourself, not how do I build a website? Who is going to build me a website?
Yep. I love that. That's super smart, obviously, for many reasons. Where can people find more information about you guys, about Joe, follow him, what you're up to, and all the things that, how can they get connected with you guys?
Thank you so much for having me, by the way. BelroseStorageGroup.com is our website. My email is joe@belroseam.com. So it's BELROSE, A as in asset, M as in management.com. And love to field emails. If you're looking to invest passively in storage or actively, if you're looking, shoot me an email. Let's start talking and we'll put you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's super generous. Like he said, I think the biggest thing is coaching and that mentorship. So as much as you can fast track, if that's something you're really interested in, hit up Joe. He's ready to help. Yeah, thanks so much.
The Average Joe podcast.
Thanks so much for being here today. It was a pleasure. I know we had some technical difficulties, but we made it through. We did it.
We're here because of technology. We have to live with what technology offers.
Yeah.
I'm happy we're able to be here, and everyone listening should be happy they're able to listen to you because, like I said, we didn't have this, when in my 20s and 30s, there was no podcast for me.
Yeah. No, it's great. I love it.
Phenomenal.
I love helping people through podcasts. And thank you guys so much for joining today. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review and let us know what you're taking away from this episode. And don't forget to share this with somebody who needs it too, who might be interested in investing, commercial storage, or whatever it is. So thank you so much for joining. Aloha. Mike says he's in Hawaii somewhere right now, and I'm in Lake Tahoe. Joe's in Philadelphia, right?
I'd rather be where you guys are, but yeah.
So, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you for making it to the end of this episode. Greatly appreciate you being here with me today on the Average Joe Finances podcast. If you haven't done so yet, make this the episode that you go leave us a 5-star rating or subscribe to our YouTube channel. The Average Joe Finances podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Have an outstanding day.